Penguin Random House Audio presents Righteous Strife: How Warring Religious Nationalists Forged Lincoln's Union by Richard Carwardine. Read for you by Fred Sanders, with an introduction read by the author.
To the History Bees of Corpus. Neutrality in politics is just as impossible as neutrality in religion. There can be but two sides to the present existing troubles of this union. Methodist Minister Leonard Smith, August 6, 1862. The feeling of antagonism between the two political parties deepened into animosity, and neighbors became enemies. The children of Democrats and Republicans could scarcely sit peaceably together in the same schoolhouse, and their parents could scarcely worship together in the same meeting house. Memoirs of Samuel Rufus Harshman, Ohio schoolteacher. Introduction. On May the 17th, 1864, the newspaperman Joseph Howard bought a lot of gold. The following morning, before dawn, New York newspapers received for publication a copy of an astounding proclamation from Abraham Lincoln, calling for 400,000 volunteers. The text seemed authentic, but was in fact Howard's creation, a hoax designed to conjure up an image of a desperate president, and so create political panic, depress the stock market, and drive up the price of the gold. Howard's ingenious scheme for self-enrichment failed, though two anti-war newspapers fell for the ruse and printed the bogus document. Lincoln, fearing a wider conspiracy, suppressed the offending publications by a direct order that prompted a nationwide spasm of political acrimony. Instead of paying off his accumulated debts, Howard's reward took the form of 3 months' military confinement at Fort Lafayette. This technicolor political drama is commonly recounted as a lesson in the fiery politics of American Civil War censorship and press freedom, but it merits at least equal attention for what it says about the intimate bond between the wartime Union's religion and politics. Howard decided that his best chance of fooling his victims was to permeate his bogus text with the familiar piety of presidential proclamations. Most of its 5 paragraphs dwelled on national moral shortcomings, humility before God, the president's personal weakness, and the providential reckoning evident in military disasters. The intended clincher came with Lincoln's purported recommendation of a nationwide day of fasting, humiliation, and prayer, to approach the throne of grace and meekly to implore forgiveness, wisdom, and guidance. As Lincoln's mimic, Howard recognized the public effect of the president's formal expressions of religious faith. Like others, he had come to see how, under the weight of wartime leadership, Lincoln's religious voice had become more pronounced and assured. Although not a declared Christian, the president had an unshakable faith that the nation, as an instrument of providence, stood at the hinge of American and world history. The pre-war experience of fasts and thanksgivings had been mostly limited to the initiative of individual state authorities in New England and its diaspora. Now, during a tumultuous struggle for national existence, the federal government itself took the lead. In total, Lincoln proclaimed 3 days of fasting and humiliation and 6 of thanksgiving, more than any president in the country's history. Each occasion licensed ministers, political leaders, and their audiences to consider how far the nation had fallen short in its historic and current pursuit of righteousness. Responsible citizenship meant reading the Bible as a political record of God's judgments. The Almighty punished some nations for their collective sins and chose others as his agents in the moral progress of humankind. Lincoln's days of religious observance encouraged Americans, meeting together in their churches, sometimes in combined congregations, to reflect on their nation's ethical course and their collective duty as a special people of God. Perhaps because public fasts are today inconceivable as means of bringing public pressure to bear, their wartime significance and flood of nationalist rhetoric have attracted little analysis, though they were freighted with political meaning and stand visible in plain sight. Placed in a wider context, they provide a series of indicative, revelatory landmarks on the course of the competing religious nationalisms in the Civil War Union. Religious nationalism is a plastic concept. It has been used in multiple eras and settings, and in diverse, often contradictory ways. I use the term simply to refer to the fusion of religious purpose and nationalist vision, where religious and national identities not only coexist, but are mutually reinforcing. Religion in the United States, from its founding to the Civil War, offered a sacred, even transcendent framework for defining the nation and prescribing its course. Unlike the sociological concept of American civil religion, which posits a common, unifying, and quasi-religious belief in the nation's political symbols and founding texts, varieties of religious nationalism can foment conflict and political disruption. This audiobook brings to the fore three key elements of the American Union's religious nationalism of Lincoln's time. It shows first that during the decades before the secession crisis of 1860 to 61, the plural institutions and voices of American religion, despite their unifying potential, helped to drive the political nation apart. That conflict between the separatist religious nationalists of the pro-slavery South, on one side, and the range of religious nationalist impulses in the North, on the other, exposed the contending value systems inherent in the opposing visions of the Republic. It bequeathed a legacy that generated an even more high-stakes political contest within the Civil War Union. This forms this audiobook's second major theme, the neglected but profound religious clash between anti-slavery and conservative nationalists in the wartime Union. That chronic conflict powered the beating heart of the war's political narrative, from the shattered optimism of the early months through the abortive Peninsula Campaign, the Emancipation Proclamation, the unprecedented slaughter of 1864, Lincoln's re-election, the congressional passage of the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, and eventually to Confederate surrender and post-war Reconstruction. In the binary divide between pro-Union nationalists, each side certain of its own righteousness, emancipators slowly gained the advantage, and conservatives railed as they watched their precious world slipping away. The audiobook's third and primary purpose is to place Abraham Lincoln within the cultural swirl and political milieu of Civil War religion. The crisis reshaped his own religious thinking, just as what he said about faith encouraged others to reflect on the Almighty's purposes. The profound trauma of war gave him a new perception of God, whom he came to see as an active force in history. This providentialist turn deepened the anti-slavery ethic that had animated his political speeches during the 1850s. Then, the beneficiaries of his Republican program to contain the wrong of slavery were to be the white settlers of the Free Soil territories. Now, a more capacious moral framework led him to embrace emancipation, a new birth of freedom, and equality of civic opportunity for both black and white. From the moment he became president-elect in November 1860, Lincoln experienced, as never before, the turbulence and breadth of the Union's religious opinions. No single category of group petitions and memorials to the President matched those of religious bodies, which arrived by the hundred. The blizzards of incoming correspondence to the Executive Mansion delivered sentiments of religious encouragement and advice, from subtle theologians to eccentric visionaries. The religious significance of the nation's war was never far from his mind, as he intimated to those who won his confidence.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?